Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the latest and the final Gary Neville podcast for this Premier League season. Gary, we're talking 24 hours after we were at Manchester City watching great celebrations. And in the end, probably best described maybe as a great recovery to become champions again.
Yes, I mean, it seems such a long time ago now that we were dismissing City, talking about potential decline, really questioning them at the start of the season, where defensively they looked really all over the place, but also the fact that they looked like they weren't going to score the goals, and the football wasn't there, the connectivity wasn't there, the body language on the pitch. I remember the Manchester derby, the 0-0, and thinking, how's it got to this, where we're watching this Manchester City team that looks like it's almost been, I think I said at the time that all the juice felt like it had been squeezed out of the orange. It's almost like they've been pepped to death, really, for 2 or 3 years. This intense passing, this intense pressing, and that they had nothing left to give. And all of a sudden, that spark. Stamford Bridge, we were both there, and you thought, oh, what's this? This is football. And it was the best half an hour, 40 minutes of the season we'd seen by a mile in that first half at Stamford Bridge. And from that moment on, they never really broke stride.
Can you pinpoint Ruben Diaz? It's obviously the signing that people are talking about, Footballer of the Year from the football writers. How key was that to sort of stabilising the team at one end to get the team playing properly at the other end?
Yeah, I mean, he's when he first signed him, it felt like, I think Jamie Carragher summed it up quite well. It felt like it was the last throw of the dice. Obviously, Vincent Kompany had left. Manchester City had decided not to compete with Manchester United on price around Harry Maguire. And I think during last season, I felt that was a mistake, because I do feel he would have, given them that presence and to not replace Kompany. But if you just said to me at the start of the season that Diaz and Stones would be a partnership as they were, I would have said absolutely not. But I think what happened was that Diaz has been that good that Stones has just felt that, sometimes a partnership works. I saw it at the latter end of the Bruce and Pallister partnership, where together they were incredible, but then when you split them up, it just didn't quite work. The same with Vidic and Ferdinand, and I think we've seen the same now with Diaz and Stones. Absolutely fantastic together, and you would have thought Laporte would have been a mainstay for years, but John Stones has re-emerged and looks like he's having the best season of his life. Diaz, I think, has been at the heart of everything. His performances have been composed, but he's had that leadership, that John Terry sort of Vincent Kompany-esque sort of clearances and blocks about him, where he's a real sort of brilliant football player, but also a fantastic warrior in the moments in games where his team need it. I do put Gundogan in there as well. I think in the period of sort of December and January, I thought he was outstanding from central midfield. I think he was a big part of City's play around that time when it was tough. But Diaz, I think you're absolutely right. The big question marks were the sort of loss of Kompany, how that was going to be dealt with. And I think Diaz has proven, beyond anyone can imagine, to be the answer.
One emerging, Phil Foden, one saying farewell, Sergio Aguero, really caught our eye for different reasons on the last day, Phil, for most of the season, to be honest. But it just shows life goes on in football, really. It's life and death, really. One emerges and one has to be departed. He didn't want to go, Aguero, but he certainly went out in style.
He did. It's difficult as a Manchester United person to just full stop admire and like Manchester City players, because obviously you're brought up not to. It's your rivalry. It's the way the city's built. But you've named 2 players there, and I think there are a few more actually at City. If you think of Kompany over the last few years, Zabaleta, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, Phil Foden, you've mentioned. Foden for me. Martin?
De Bruyne,
sorry, as well. De Bruyne as well. I called them a collection of delicious football players yesterday. It's a word I don't use to describe anything or anyone. Maybe the odd bite to eat at times, but they are absolutely incredible to watch. They're sublime. It's a different way of playing football than I ever imagined. I said yesterday after the game that I never imagined that the league, our league, could be won this way, with a group of technical players. And I said that 15 years ago, if you had one of these players in your squad, we'd be asking the question, how do you fit him in? What's his best position? Pep's got 6, 7 or 8 of them all in one team, all in one squad. And you're focusing on sort of Sergio Aguero and Phil Foden. I feel warm towards Phil Foden in the sense that he's a local kid. And because of my upbringing at United, I do feel really passionate about local lads doing well. I feel about the area of Greater Manchester producing great football players. And this is one incredible talent. And it's now not even an incredible talent, because we're now talking about, talent potential. It's gone beyond that. This is a performer. This, in the big games, this lad steps up. He's someone to contend with. They're not just looking now at De Bruyne. They're not just looking at Sterling. They're not just looking at Mahrez. They're looking at Foden as being someone who influences huge matches. And I'm really looking forward to the Champions League final, not because I want City to win it. In fact, in some ways, it would almost be wrong of me to want them to win it. I don't. But for some reason, I want Phil Foden to do well, because he's a local kid. He's a local lad. Aguero, I think he goes in the same bucket as David Silva, that you just have to admire. You just have to say, well done. I questioned when they first come to Manchester whether they would stay in it for the long haul, thinking that they would want to go back to Madrid, to Barcelona, to great teams, obviously, in their, where they feel more comfortable with the weather. Here in Manchester this morning, it was chucking it down yesterday, but both of them stayed for years and years and years. And Aguero, incredible performer. His goals to minutes ratio that we saw regularly during that game yesterday was absolutely brilliant. I was in that stadium, Martin, all those years ago when he scored that goal, and it was my first year out of Manchester United, and it hurt badly. Your commentary obviously lit that moment up, and it was replayed yesterday. And he's just somebody who I think everybody recognises as world class. Everybody recognises as a good person. Everybody recognises as someone that they respect and would want in their team. And I think if Phil Foden can sort of look at people like Sergio Aguero, I used to think when I broke through at Manchester United, I had great standard bearers in front of me. I had Steve Bruce, Brian Robson, Gary Pallister, Eric Cantona, Mark Hughes. They were great players, but they were also people who did things the right way. They fought every single game. They played at a high level every single week. And Phil Foden's been there now for 3 or 4 years around company, around David Silva, around De Bruyne, around Sergio Aguero. And what those players do when they perform like they do every single week, they leave the young players nowhere to go. You have to work hard. You have to prepare well. You have to eat the right things. You have to sleep well. You have to do the right things every single minute of every single day. And this is a constant. And this is how you achieve consistency. And this is why I think Phil Foden now is basically surrounded by good people, good professionals, great players. And he's now emerging as one himself. And I hope that can continue for England's sake. We're going to see him in England's shirt this summer. And I hope he lights the tournament up. I've not been as excited about seeing a young player in a tournament probably since Rooney in 2004. You think of Michael Owen in 98. You think of Gascoigne in 90. These English players that have lit up tournaments. And Foden has the ability to do that.
One thing we talked about yesterday was, did Liverpool lose the title the moment Virgil van Dijk got injured?
They did. They did lose the title the minute he got injured. It was too big a blow for them to be able to come back from. And I always remember on the Monday night after that Liverpool-Everton game, and I thought Jamie Carragher did a very good piece, a piece of analysis. And he looked at seasons where big players have been lost in teams. And he looked at Roy Keane getting his cruciate ligament injury at Leeds United in '98 when we lost the double to Arsenal, lost the league to Arsenal. He looked at the Cantona season when the Kung Fu Kick and Blackburn won the league. And he looked at a number of scenarios where big players have been lost. Company leaving City last season, all of a sudden they lose the league. He looked at scenarios where one player came out of a team and just had that impact that meant that the rest couldn't cope with it. And Van Dijk, I think, is that good. That I just think his impact of loss was such a big blow for Liverpool. The fans obviously being in there as well, but I think the impact upon the rest of his teammates. I think I said the same thing in the last week. I think Van Dijk's proven over a couple of years to be, ahead of Harry Maguire, but Harry Maguire has a similar impact on this Manchester United team. There's one player who just seems to hold it together. And it does mean you do give credit to Pep Guardiola at City, who has had periods without De Bruyne or without Aguero and other players of great stature. But I think Liverpool's season was unfortunately for them, finished at the point whereby we had them as title winners. I mean, they were absolute certain title winners at that point. There was never a question in anyone else's mind that they would win it again this year.
Chelsea changed their manager. Frank Lampard, a very popular figure at the club, a very popular figure in English football, much like by us in the media as well. How significant looking back at the season was that moment, good and bad?
It was a blow, wasn't it? You know, it was a blow for English managers, for English football. You know, we've seen Steven Gerrard do brilliantly up at Rangers. We've seen, obviously, Frank Lampard get the Chelsea job. So you're starting to look at Scott Parker at Fulham and got promoted out of the Championship. And you're starting to get a little bit excited. Even Michael Carrick at United, John Terry at Aston Villa. You know, young English coaches emerging into positions that actually think, well, it would be difficult a few years ago to get them into those positions. So it was a blow, I think, for Frank to leave. But honestly, I mean, I was at Valencia, Martin, for 4 months. And Frank's a far better coach and a far better manager than me. But it wasn't the right move for me because I didn't speak the language and I couldn't communicate. But it was also too big for me. And you look back now and think, was Frank, you know, was the signing of this £220 million worth of players, did it put that much of a pressure on him that it just was too much too soon at that point? That's something that will be reflected upon by him. But I've got no doubts that he'll come back and he'll do a great job and that he'll be successful and that he'll have a long career in management and coaching. He's single-minded, he's determined, he's ruthless, he's got all the qualities, he's intelligent, he's got all the qualities he can communicate that you would think a good manager has. And maybe this experience will be a good one for him. But I think, obviously, it's been made probably a little more sore for him by the fact that Tuchel's come in and done really well. The team's obviously got into Champions League, albeit a little bit fortunate yesterday to get into the Champions League, and they've got a Champions League final next week, which is something to behold, really. You think that Chelsea get into a Champions League final, you never would have thought that 4 months ago. So, look, it's a learning experience for Frank, but you've got to say that Thomas Tuchel's come in. He's ahead of Frank in his experience and his wealth of knowledge about how to handle players at that level. And he's proven that in the last few months, what a great job he's done.
What are your feelings about Leicester City? They've won the FA Cup, but they've had a deja vu last day of the season to miss out on the Champions League.
I was disappointed yesterday, were you? I was a little bit, there's the one part of yesterday that you just thought, you know, not to the expense of Liverpool or Chelsea, it's nothing against those two clubs. I just felt that would have been a nice moment for a number of reasons. One, because I think Brendan Rodgers has done an exceptional job. They're missing out last season. They've had a brilliant season, I think, to be fair. The FA Cup final and then winning in front of the fans was brilliant. I also think the European Super League, in terms of this idea that the big clubs should always get into the Champions League, this sort of fixed proposition that we had a few weeks ago, and the idea that West Ham and Leicester, you know, broke into it. So there's just a number of reasons why I wanted Leicester to get into the top four yesterday. And, you know, they fell short in the end. They still had a great season. But I just felt a little disappointed for Brendan Rodgers, for the players, because, you know, you can imagine that next season it's going to be really difficult for them to go close again. You've got to think that Tottenham, Arsenal, and other clubs are going to sort of grow and get stronger, and you don't know, but you've got to imagine it's going to get tougher for them to get into the top four if they couldn't get in this year or last.
Finishing above Tottenham and Arsenal were West Ham, and David Moyes almost reinventing himself and turning what was a very difficult situation when he went back for a second time into a sixth place finish and some delightful football along the way. Really good.
Yeah, really good. Honestly, really good football. I've enjoyed watching West Ham this year. For too many years, I've always thought of West Ham and Newcastle as clubs that when I played at West Ham at Upton Park, and you know, I always think of Di Canio, he just comes straight into my mind, and just thinking of this sort of exceptional atmosphere, always having two or three players that are outstanding, whether it be a Joe Cole or whether it be Di Canio, someone that could light up Upton Park. And the spark that always you felt might come there, even though they had disappointing seasons at times, they went down, you felt there was a spark and that connection. And the last few years, it's been a little bit difficult to watch West Ham in the new stadium, disconnection with the owners, that sort of, you know, you go there and you're miles away from the pitch, and it's been difficult for them to sort of, and for this year, for them to play the way they have with Fornals, with Antonio, with Bowen, with Ben Rama, all the quality players that they have, the really good players. Jesse Lingard coming in the last few weeks to the season, or a few months of the season. In midfield, Rice and Solskjaer. Have I pronounced it right? Or not? Solskjaer.
Yeah.
They've been as good a midfield pair as you'll see in terms of how they perform consistently. I've really enjoyed West Ham this season. And I think for the fans not to have been able to witness that at a point whereby they probably needed that more than ever, really, as a club to connect everyone together in a really good season, is a disappointment, but a brilliant achievement by David Moyes. Fantastic from the players. What I do hope is that they can keep that group together for West Ham fans next season, because you can imagine West Ham have been a club over the years like Southampton and like a couple of other clubs where when they have a successful time, ordinarily the sort of big clubs sort of hone in, and you could see, Solskjaer, you could see Rice, you could see others becoming sort of the target of clubs at the upper echelons of the league. So let's hope they can keep that group together at least for one more season, so that fans can see that West Ham team together. And David Moyes can have another good crack at it with that group, because I think they could perform. I don't think that group would let you down again next season. I think they're actually quite reliable as well. So they've got some skill, they've got some stability, but they've also got, I think, consistency. They've got good characters in there. And I've not always said that about West Ham. I think David Moyes has done a brilliant job.
You've led on nicely to another part of London in terms of a player being courted by the bigger clubs, and a big event in the season, the sacking of Jose Mourinho and the potential departure of Harry Kane, who you spent some time with quite recently.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's blown up in the last couple of weeks. Contrary to some, I did the interview with Harry, but the news broke had been wanting to leave Spurs, or this perceived element of wanting to leave Spurs, 3 or 4 days before my interview came out. So it had already broken at that point that, there was a conversation to be had. I think everybody even before that recognised that this was potentially a crossroads moment whereby, obviously Tottenham, they've come through this really golden period, even though they've not won anything. They've come through this golden period where they've got to Champions League finals, they've got to second in the league. They've had a really great period as a club where they've played great football, they've moved to a new stadium. But you've got this exceptional player in Harry Kane, and it's a really simple sort of conundrum. Does he want to stay at Tottenham? Do Tottenham want to keep him for the next 10 years? And he does what maybe a Matt Letizia did at Southampton, or an Alan Shearer when he went back to Newcastle did. You can have exceptional careers and be at clubs like that where you stay there and it's your club, it's what you do, you don't leave, and this is where I'm at. Or does he do what maybe a Rio Ferdinand did, leaving Leeds United, or a Wayne Rooney leaving Everton? Other clubs, other players over the years that have done this, where they've left and gone to what would be other clubs in the league that have sort of been more successful and go down that different path. And I think this summer is probably the moment where it will either happen or it won't. You could argue maybe next year, but I think once Harry gets to 30, it's going to get to a point whereby that moment's going to have gone. So I think that's a big moment for Tottenham. It's a big moment for Harry Kane. He's gold, Martin. I use that gold phrase because when Manchester United signed Brian Robson, Ron Atkinson said it was a huge price tag at the time, £1 million or £1.1 million. And he said, it's not even a risk. It's like buying gold. It will always be worth something. It will always appreciate. And these signings for me are gold. A Rio Ferdinand, a Rooney, they're gold. You just know they're going to perform. Shearer, it's just gold. And I look at Harry Kane and he fits into that category. Any club that gets him is not going to be disappointed with what he delivers. He's consistent, he's reliable, he's exceptional, he will break the records, and that's with England and with the Premier League. I'm absolutely certain of it. When I spoke to him last week, and I'd worked with him for obviously a couple of years with England, but it's probably obviously you don't, when you coach a player, you don't have that 2 or 3 hours of what would be conversation about what would be normal stuff. And it took that 2 or 3 hours really of sort of speaking to him on that golf course to understand how professional, how determined, how single-minded he is, but also how committed he is to his teammates as well. And I said on Sunday, I didn't hear a player saying, I want to leave Tottenham when I spoke to him. In fact, he didn't say that at all. I think he just said what everybody's thought all season, that there will be a conversation at the end of the season about what's happening with Tottenham and what's happening elsewhere. And I don't think it's anything groundbreaking that, no one's expecting Daniel Levy just to roll over and sort of say Harry Kane's available for 70 million quid. Harry Kane himself, I don't think would be expecting that. I think everyone knows it will take a big price. But I think Tottenham fans should welcome the conversation, because what they're going to get out of it is they're going to basically put Daniel Levy under pressure to say, look, are you going to build a new team in this post-Pochettino-Mourinho era with a new manager, and you're going to invest in the team to get them to a high level again? Or are you just going to accept that we're going to go back to being Tottenham? Because Tottenham have, in the last few years, they flirted with they flirted with the Champions League title, they flirted with winning the Premier League title. Are they going to get to that level in that new stadium, or are they going to go back to being 7th, 8th, 6th, and come back to being where you think Tottenham ordinarily would be? And that's the decision that Daniel Levy, and I'm sure Harry Kane will want those answers, as any great player would.
I'm going to throw some quick fire ones at you, and we'll finish off with Manchester United. But let's go VAR.
I've said all season stick with it, and I think I'm still saying that, but it's deplored by football fans. And yesterday, I think I joked after the Aguero goal, the first Aguero goal, you've got this sort of like, you have this amazing piece of commentary over it, declaring how important he's been in English football, the moment, capturing it. And I don't know if you heard it, you may not have done because you were speaking. And I've got VAR as we stopped the park in our ear, as we always do. And it came through, check complete. And I'm thinking, just imagine that moment. And there are so many other moments. But then if you think of what happened with Chelsea and Leicester in the cup final, and how that moment where it was accuracy brought Leicester the cup final, and that moment of drama. So I'm still saying stick with it. When I asked Harry Kane that question last week, he said stick with it, but they want to see some amendments and some adaptations and some more efficiencies within it. And I think there's got some real hard work done with the referees this summer, FIFA, UEFA, in terms of what works, what doesn't work, where accuracy almost destroys the game and it becomes a point whereby it's enough's enough. So I think offside something that needs looking at, and the point of where obviously we take the line. I think handball, I think, has been dealt with. I'm more comfortable now with the way they're getting handball right. And I think most other things are okay. I think it has got better in the last few months. But I think offside still remains the big sort of, if you like, dislike point, where it's a toenail or it's this sort of armpit line. So I think I'm saying stick with it, but I'm conscious of the fact that the fans deplore it and they don't like it, and we need to make sure we get it better for them.
No crowds for the vast majority of the season. A unique season.
I mean, Martin, it's been awful, hasn't it? Really, if we're being honest, without crowds, I mean, you only realise it fully. You realise it, of course you do. We say it every week. But when you watch that Leicester-Chelsea Cup final and you see the fans and the celebrations, and even just watching the sort of games over the weekend with the 10,000 fans in, it just goes to show that how important football fans are. We know that anyway. We have that crowd noise in our ears when we're commentating. It cons us that we're in an empty stadium, but the players on the pitch haven't got anything. And you turn that crowd noise off just for the odd moment in the games to see, what's going on, and you think it is soulless. It is absolutely soulless. And we need to get fans back in that stadium, and we need to not just reward fans. I think we need to accept their importance in the game. And I think that's come to the fore ever more in the last few weeks, where fans across the country at different clubs have protested in their own ways. Some would argue wrongly at Manchester United, but then obviously we've seen protests at Tottenham, at Liverpool, at Arsenal, at Chelsea. And fans want a better deal. They want a better deal in the game. They want a bigger voice. And I think we've seen how important they are in this last 12 months. Football isn't anything without fans. Sir Matt Busby said that 50, 60 years ago. And I suppose there's not a truer phrase been said by any manager when it comes to football and football fans themselves.
Taking the knee.
Well, it was interesting watching that piece that we did yesterday before the game, speaking to players about the importance of it. And I know that a few players have decided that they're not going to take the knee anymore. I think there's been big disappointment, huge disappointment in the booing of the knee in the last couple of weeks. I find that unacceptable. I think that for me, it's imperative that continues. until we see compulsory education across the game and a consequence that matches, the racial offences that occur. We have to lead in football. It's no good saying this is a societal problem. Football is society. It's a representation of society. Football is everything in this country. We've seen that in the last couple of months. We've seen that in the last 12 months, how important football's been in getting people sort of motivated and stimulated during a pandemic when they've been locked in over the winter months. And it was football that kept a lot of households going. And so the idea that we shouldn't address societal issues from football is absolutely the wrong place to start. So I believe the need should continue, but I'm still looking for with that compulsory education, that diversity inclusion training that takes place for every football fan, that's a season ticket holder, that's every football administrator, every football operator within clubs, every football player, every football broadcasting partner, so that we're all connected and we understand. We saw the incident, I don't know if you saw last night, Martin, the Rio Ferdinand incident that was announced by Rio on his social media after the game, where he was racially abused at Wolves. And there has to be consequence of this. And what is the consequence? Does that person really deserve to be employed in his own job outside of football? We cannot disconnect an offence in a football stadium from employment. And the idea that Rio was racially abused last night by a fan, that shouldn't just be a season ticket that's lost. That's a livelihood. It should be. I mean, that's the consequence that I think would really then start to have an impact upon, on racist offences, and it would connect the football issue with the societal issue. And I think it would have a big impact. So, consequence aligned with education. But I think the idea that we drop taking the knee, and I heard that the Premier League are going to consult with players in the next few weeks as to whether it should continue next season. I think that's right. I think the players should be consulted. I think the PFA should be consulted, but I'd hope that it would continue to make sure that ultimately we get to a point whereby there is action and we're not just talking about campaigns or symbolic gestures like taking the knee. They actually count for something and they mean something.
We'll finish with Manchester United, and I know the season's not finished for them. I mean, that's probably going to be part of your answer here, but where are we with the team that's had an amazing away record and has still been described in our podcast as being the odd bunch?
Yeah, they are the odd bunch. Their season is just about to begin. I would imagine. Has training started? Maybe just started. Yeah, they've got 2 days of training before the biggest game of the season. Look, if you said to me at the start of the season, Martin, Manchester United would finish second in this league, knowing what happened last year, I would have said, I'd take that and snap your hand off. But I do think a trophy aligned with finishing second. I know what a trophy does. There was a period between 2003 and 2006 at Manchester United where we didn't win a trophy. And people always think the Sir Alex Ferguson era at United was all success. But not winning anything for 3 years and having these two exceptional teams and managers in Arsene Wenger and Jose Mourinho with the Invincibles and then that Jose Mourinho team, there were thoughts in my head and certainly a few of the players at the time, is that it? Have we finished? Are we done? And then we won the League Cup in Cardiff. I don't know if you remember, Martin, it was the first trophy that I think that Cristiano Ronaldo had won at the club, or maybe the first one that Wayne Rooney had won at the club. And the impact and the impetus that it had on that dressing room in terms of feeling that medal around your neck, that feeling of winning, being up on that podium. And this group of players need that podium feeling. They need that winning feeling. So I think if they weren't to win on Wednesday, it would be almost a disappointment and it would blight the season almost. But if Manchester United can win on Wednesday, this has been a really good season for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It would demonstrate great progress. And then you're talking about recruitment. You're talking about Varane. You're talking about Kane, Haaland, Sancho. Those players that would take them to that next level, that have got the numbers in the attacking area that would mean that they would become more exceptional in front of goal. And then obviously a player at the back that would give that partnership alongside Maguire that you think, I could see that being there for 3 or 4 years, that would really challenge and put United sort of at the forefront of challenging City and Liverpool. But Manchester United are going to have to do something exceptional. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to have to do something exceptional because Tuchel, Guardiola and Klopp are exceptional winning managers, and they're hungry and they're ruthless and they just win relentlessly. So Manchester United cannot think that winning the Europa League on Wednesday, if they were to, and finishing second, that they still don't need that jump up a level. They're still 12 points behind City. It's a lot, but you've got to swing that 4 games. City have got to lose 4 more and you've got to win. It just doesn't work that easily. So United have still got to do big stuff this summer. But Wednesday, Martin, I've been asked to go and watch it in a pub. I've been asked to go and watch it at a friend's house. I'm going to sit at home. I'm going to watch it because I think it's such an important moment in this period in Manchester United's history. I really think it's that important for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and for this group of players to get a medal around the necks.
Gary, it's been great sharing the season with you. I hope Wednesday you enjoy one way or the other, wherever you are. You might go down the pub afterwards.
I know. Hopefully not to drown my sorrows.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Martin.